Oh, boy.
So are we gonna read this during the whole thing now?
No, the last, a lot, like the other pages are just the comments, so you can review those at, and they were in your last packet as well. Yeah. But if you wanted to like look at them right now,
Matches
highlight
perfect.
anything.
Jonathan, the basement.
Yeah, that kind of that, yeah,
We brought those to you last week, and we also have printed all the public comments, 50 pages worth. So the input from our community was extremely well received and provided us feedback in the form of about 3,000 responses, which, you know, by our gauge, that seems to be pretty good. And so we do have a lot of information for you. We won't focus so much today on the survey results because you had about a week to process those, but they are there in front of you for reference as we go through some of our discussion items with you today. What I have included for you, and this is just a framework for discussion, and certainly the board can take it any direction they want, it wants. And so I thought it would be important to start with what the goals are for today's meeting. And so that way you know what you want to capture for today, what you want to plan for in the future. And so maybe you would like to talk about that, what your outcome would be. And, you know, just by way of time, we do have a number of public folks here that would like to address the board. So, you know, keeping them in their seats for a couple hours would be tough. But the board needs to do their work first. This is a board meeting and held in public and set up for some public comment today. So we had planned for about 2 hours. And certainly you can gauge by the time, the discussion, your processing, and all of that, how long you'd like to go. I have listed here 4 options. Previously, I thought, you know, 3 is kind of what we had talked about. Rebuild on existing footprint, rebuild with some enhancements, new high school, new school, along with future projects. And so I think there's an opportunity here to talk about those. Because of the feedback we received, it was, it seemed favorable to me in regard to doing something other than building on the existing footprint. Again, the board has their discretion, and you provide that direction to us. So I don't know how far you want to get with that item. I would say maybe we focus on the other three for purposes of moving forward. However, again, at your discretion. On the next page, I have next step options. And so, again, something for you to consider and think about. We listed 3 or 4 here. Town hall, as we meet with our community, perhaps those are informal. We might be able to do videos and podcasts. Certainly a second survey could be an option for you if that's what you would like. And then certainly with time, if the board chooses to look at a bond, we would need to approve bond counsel and also appoint a financial advisor. And probably the sooner the better as we look at the timeline. And again, I would like the public to know that we have no rush on this, other than we know that there's a November election and we know that there's a May election. And so if the direction is to pursue a bond, then we just need to keep that in mind as we move forward. Other considerations. What else would you like to know? What other questions do you have? And as we get into that, I'll have this group introduce themselves, because we have a number on our panel today that will be able to, I think, answer a lot of your questions, I hope, as well as for our public consideration as well. And then that final section are the reminders. And so remember too that a supermajority vote is required on all bonds. Pocatello Chubbuck School District has not participated in a bond election for about 25 years or so. And so on all of our supplemental levies and our school plant facilities levy, those are significantly, it's less. It's 50 to 55%. So this gives us a bigger goal to achieve, certainly. The timeline, again, as I mentioned, we would have about until September 18th to provide the county some language in regard to anything we do regarding a bond for November election, March 25th for any bond language, or a May election. And as we'll talk today and discuss, we know that about 1,600 learners are going to be impacted by this, as well as their families, or activities and so forth. So again, timeline, not trying to expedite or rush, but be considerate of all of our families primarily affected by this, but then knowing too that all people will be directly affected by this by way of a bond, and the impact for any future discussions as we add that into today. Enrollment and growth projections. Our enrollment has been pretty steady for the last few years, and Carl presented that last week in our budget meeting and showed you the projections for the future. Of course, those are just a projection, it's a prediction to some extent. We see growth all around us, so we definitely want to take that into consideration. And as the comment said, we don't want to miss an opportunity if one exists there. And so with that too, the board authorized the purchase of the former Allstate building, Pocatello Valley Technical Education Career Campus, and we will be coming to the board with some bid items for you to consider getting that work started as well. Then you can see election results history. We had that for you in the previous board packet. Along with, I think we need to consider, again, this is going back to growth and enrollment, student capacity of a new build or rebuild with enhancements. And so that's just a framework for, I think, what we may want to discuss today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan, and then we'll run the gamut here of all of the folks that are seated at this table to help you with an informed decision as we work through this. Okay,
So by way of introductions, correct?
yes, okay.
Again, Jonathan Balls, Director of Business here with the school district.
Hi, I'm Ken Craven with Design West. We're excited to work with the district and appreciate the opportunity.
Design West is the architect, from, if you'll say your role as well.
Yeah, I'll be the project manager on this.
I'm Mike Clements with Bateman Hall, and thank you for the selection for CMGC. Appreciate that. I'm the CEO and will be heavily involved with pre-construction and through the construction process as well.
I'm Shay Moon, I'm the president of Bateman Hall. Appreciate the opportunity, and I oversee a lot of the site processes on the job site when it starts up, and I also like with the pre-construction process.
I'm Stephen Williams, I'm with Design West Architects. I'll be actually the design architect, so working with everyone, making sure whatever happens, whether it's a rebuild on site or a new school, that it fits the mold that you guys are trying to design to.
Larry Hepworth with Design West, I'm the principal in charge. I'll make sure we meet all your goals and expectations, working with the students. So again, thank you for this opportunity as well.
Travis Bell, Athletic Director and Vice Principal at Highland High School.
Brad Wallace, principal at Highland High School.
Jenna Wilcox, Vice Principal at Highland.
Alan Spidell, Plant Coordinator for the school district.
Superintendent, Director, Secondary Ed.
Doug Howell, Superintendent.
Renee Johnson, Board Clerk.
Do you want me to?
Oh, if you'd like, but hopefully everyone knows our board members, you know. But it's up to you.
Go ahead.
Angie Oliver, board member.
Heather Clark, Board Member.
Jim Facer, Board Chair.
Deanna Judy, Board Member.
Okay, so with that, Mr. Chairman, we can start wherever you'd like. Again, I just provided something to jumpstart us a little bit if you'd like, or if you have some other thoughts or ideas as far as how you would like to format this meeting.
Well, I guess I hadn't thought about that far in ahead, Vanessa. Do you guys have any questions you'd like to bring up first?
Mr. Chair, can I have you pull that mic?
I have a few thoughts.
Go ahead, Ms. Clark.
I mean, I think the thing I would like to kind of talk through today, if we could, is I know during some of the architect and construction, and I apologize because I can't remember which one of you had done this, but there was a district-wide evaluation. Mm-hmm. So I think that's something I would like to propose we at least think about doing. An evaluation of all of our buildings, because I don't know when the last time that was done, because I think that will contribute a lot to this conversation as to what buildings
Need
and where they are, because I think that came out pretty loudly in some of these comments. The second would be, you know, obviously what I think, again, and I think we brought it up at another board meeting, that we need to make it very clear to the public, again, that school will be in session in person in the fall, and I think Courtney has already started to make that, and I think the more we repeat that, the better, because I think through all this process, that also seems to be a major concern that comes through as people are expecting hybrid or displacement. And so obviously the construction guys are going to have a say in that one. And then the next would be, at least what I'm really interested in hearing, is if we were to do a new building property, have we done any research there? And you know, the other thing that seemed to come out pretty clear in this comments is it a high school or is it a middle school? And I guess I would be curious from some of the school administrators what they envision as being the greatest need. The other thing that also seemed to come out big to me is that we can't just, if we do decide a new build, it can't just be the same size. That an 1,800 school building, we need to be, you know, if this is our opportunity to build, is it time to build I don't know, I'm gonna throw out a number, a 2,400 school. And yes, it might seem empty at first, but preparing for that growth. I'm also, many in this community that know me know I'm a big proponent of the arts. And so I want equal for whether even being the rebuild on site, that the auditorium needs a refresh. Our arts and music kids need equal billing in this, whatever happens. And then my kids were big swimmers. We have a huge, you know, opportunity also potentially looking, and whether it's a partnership with the city, as Deanna has brought up before, we need a swimming pool in this community that can accommodate the growth that is happening in our school athletics. that could also be a partnership with the city in some way to help alleviate what I think is also a need in this community that would address the entire community and not just focusing on Highland students. So those are the things I'm interested in hearing and want to talk about.
There are a few things. I was disappointed about the survey because there was a lot of information that was not shared prior to the survey and was not included in the survey. And you could see that. When you see the comments, you can see there's a lot of confusion. Well, what would you do about this? What would you do about this? So a couple of things I want to share is that it wouldn't cost the taxpayer the full amount for a new high school. We have 30% that would come back to us from the state in bond equalization. So that's the first thing. The second thing is after the survey went out, the insurance did say that we can use all of the money for a new building on a new site. That's really important to know. So that if we don't want to use the money on a dated inadequate structure, we can begin fresh on, and just as a little side note on that, Highland sits on 32 acres, and one of our designers, it wasn't actually Design West, it was the other one, suggested that a high school this size, and especially for future growth, should have 60 acres. So we're sitting on 32 acres.
That was 80.
And so that's the information is that right? 32 acres?
That's correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, so the other thing is that it's misleading. I really want people to understand that I think we all agree as a board that this cannot just affect Highland High School students. This has to be a community thing. It has to affect everyone all the way down to kindergarten and kids that do not attend District 25. So my thought process is, and I want input, I want feedback, because I want to know, what ideas are good, what aren't that great, and what could you add? But my idea for this is that all ancillary structures if we were to build a new high school, would be shared. Would have an auditorium a size that would be big enough for our entire community, for community events, for things like this, for the future, and it would be shared between all the high schools. Right now, our high schools are not great at sharing facilities, so it would be shared. It would not be Highland High School Auditorium. It would be a different name. For example, Ralston Stadium in Idaho Falls, that doesn't belong to one high school. That is shared, and there's nothing wrong with sharing. The other thing is that I would like to look at what does our community want? What do we need? Maybe it's baseball diamonds. Maybe it's an indoor field house. What I would like is an indoor swimming pool and an indoor field house. That would be shared with the entire community. Private school, homeschool, people that aren't in the district, older people that want to come and walk in the mornings in the wintertime, in an indoor field house. I want communicated loud and clear that if we were to pass a bond for this high school, it would not be for one group of students. And not only that, if we were to vacate Highland, not rebuild, we could do the parking lot, a lot bigger parking lot, keep the stadium there, keep the baseball field there, and at the new place, build what we need. So maybe it's just a practice field. Maybe it's a very nice track with a practice field. All three high schools have just had a lot of money dumped into them for football stadiums. They can stay there. That is their stadium, and that can stay there. There's no reason to, unless it's a shared stadium, which I would love to have a shared stadium, but not just for one high school. But and what I mean by down to elementary school, down to kindergarten, is that we have some schools that are falling apart, and we've been told that it's costing so much money to keep them in operation, more money than it's worth. And if we could move the kids out of those structures, inadequate structures, in the elementary into a better building, it's a domino effect. We build a new school, we get rid of older schools, and I would want those buildings to be sold and put toward this bond so that it's less of a burden for the taxpayers. I don't want to pay more taxes. I do not want that. But the way that this survey sounded, it sounded like I would be hit with this massive tax bill and I wouldn't see all that much of a benefit. But if you look at it a different way, would see all the way down to kindergarten, all the kids would be able to be shifted into better buildings, better places, more adequate structures, and we would have more land for future development for Highland. I disagree that, oh, in a few years, I think we should ask, the community for a bond for a new high school. No. With this wasted opportunity, I think the answer would be a huge, loud and clear no, because why didn't you, when you had the opportunity for a huge down payment with the insurance money and with bond equalization, which is currently 30%, why didn't you do it when you had the chance? I have a lot of thoughts, so.
I would also, like to know properties that the school district currently has that could be sold to help if we choose, to build a new high school.
Where all they are.
Yeah, what those properties are, and while the economy is still good, maybe it's time to sell some of those so that we can have, the money to help with a new build or whatever is decided to do. So, and I really feel like it's important to hear from the members of our community to get their input and feel like this is their project. This is why we're here to represent the community.
Yes, I definitely want public input. I mean, if everybody disagrees with, my thoughts, I am perfectly fine with that. I just want the right information to be shared so that people are making an educated decision and not just a decision thinking that this is only affecting one group of students, when it is not. It is not. It's affecting our entire community. The arts, swimming, it's just because we get 30% back from the state if we do this as a bond. There's a board together that has come together to try to do a swimming pool. If they do that, that would be really wonderful. But all of the money that they get municipally would be from taxpayers' pockets, 100%. If we do this in a bond as a school district, we get 30% back from the state. I'm all about deals. I mean, I'm thinking 30% off, that's a pretty good, but it affects the entire community. The only way to get 30% off of a project is to do it in a bond. And I would not be opposed to adding things from other schools that are in need.
That's why I think
They are
it's
all children.
important that we do the comprehensive study. I think it was Design West that did that. Is that correct? Somewhere else?
Yes, we did that for Idaho Falls.
Yeah.
Every facility in the district.
Could you talk about the scope and the timeline on that? That's my two biggest
Well,
fear with that.
it's always a good idea to do that, kind of a pre-plan and widen it as much as you can, but of course, it's not cheap, because you've got professionals, you've got structural engineers, mechanical engineers, and electrical engineers, and at their hourly rate, they're all looking at things. So I think it'd be a great idea to do it, but I'd try and just focus on the areas that are really important to the district, to maybe save money with that initial step. I think Idaho Falls, I think it took us like 3 months to do, but we did every school. And there, you mentioned it, Deanna, that, they had schools that they felt like they were just dumping money into. And there's a
Yes.
threshold. Once you cross the threshold, it's just money being thrown away.
Yep, we've crossed
And,
that threshold.
Yeah, so a lot of their schools, they remodeled, and then 4 of them, they crossed that 70% threshold, and they just said, we need new schools. But they had that plan that identified what the problems were and what the potential was.
And I just wanted to mention that with timeline, that was,
Yeah,
that's a
that-
great
that's-
idea, and I've done that before, and it was great, it steered a lot of things, it just took time, and then money. I can share with you 2016 cost, but again, it would be 3 months, and then, then you.
When is the last time we've done it here, or have we? I guess you
I
may
don't
not have
think-
been here,
I'm
but.
looking at Alan, I don't think we've done a comprehensive,
Ever?
yeah.
Probably
Yeah,
never.
so-
At least 10 years.
But,
Like an evaluation of structure and all that stuff.
but if you probably in your mind have a priority list of the ones that you know.
Some are in better shape than others, yes.
Right.
I mean, that's definitely a factor.
Yeah,
just
no,
the
I
timing, right?
agree,
just wanted to be
timing.
Aware of that, but it's a great outcome, if we have the time.
I guess the thing that I look at is the results from that gives a huge justification to the
Does.
community versus us just kind of, I mean, and I'm not suggesting you spitball, but you know what I mean? I think it really gives more credence to whatever decision we come to is because we've got some good data. And maybe it is, maybe it's more of you know which schools we potentially would be looking at either closing down or selling and
Well, yeah,
do you do?
it's always based on schedule and cost. And, so my suggestion would be to kind of develop a focused plan as opposed to the entire district,
Mhm.
if schedule and money is an issue. We could also do a tandem approach where we would put one team on kind of an evaluation and another team just focus specifically on the high school and what we need to do with the high school project.
One other thing that I want to mention that I've heard in this survey a lot and heard feedback is, I don't want to do that because it's going to take too long. I want my kid in school. The children, that is my first priority, absolutely my first priority. So what I want everybody to understand is that our insurance covers displacement. So whatever it costs for 100% of every student that was there last year to have a place to be in school and learn, that is covered by insurance. That is not something that our taxpayers will pay. And so that means, modular buildings, it means whatever it means, we're reaching out to the community, we're using, Calvary Chapel and different places for band and choir, a lot of different things, but the kids will be back in school full-time every day, and every single opportunity will still be available to them, whether it's band, choir, all of the sports, all of it is still available to them. And if we also need to use, for Highland, if Highland needs to use spaces that are in other schools, fields, tracks, we're sharing. We're all a district, they're all children, they're equally important, and everybody's paid for it.
So, Jonathan, will the insurance pay for Calvary or use of, the building on Princeton for, I think it was cheer and wrestling?
Correct, yes. So they will. My only comment there is, I just don't know for how long. For example, if we elongate the process, they might come to say, no, this should have been done in 2 years. This, rebuild, right? That's what the insurance, rebuild in the same footprint. So I haven't asked them that question. So yes, they are gonna cover it for at least,
But
2 to 3
years.
years. If we take 5 years, for example, I don't know if they'll cover years 4 or 5.
I
We
do,
could ask them.
I'm sorry about that.
But
I do have a solution to that, and that is that we prioritize the new building based on our needs. So if we do not have a place for band and choir, that goes up first. And the insurance cannot argue with the fact that that's how long it took to build that back. So if we build the auditorium first, if we build the large gym first, the things that were burned, the wrestling room, all the things that we're having to reach out to the community to get, if we build that first, is that,
Are you talking
builder,
about-
the construction, is that reasonable?
Are you talking about a new build
If we did a new
in
build
phases?
and we did the phases, the first phase would be whatever the insurance would cover, so that the kids would not be displaced into the rental, places. Is that reasonable?
Is that cost effective to do it that way?
Right.
Well, there's a couple things. It is reasonable, but the jurisdictions, DBS.
Division of
what's
Building
that?
Safety.
I was gonna say.
Division of Building Safety.
Yeah, they do.
You have to get a certificate of occupancy. And usually that's on the entire building, the life safety measures in the entire building. It would be a lot of work, that'd be more for Design West to phase of the building and the site firewalls and everything to separate that out.
Mm-hmm.
And it would drive cost up.
Sprinkler, I mean, so you'd have to.
Oh, well, all that would be there, sprinklers would be there, but you just have to have that separation.
Separation wall.
Separation.
Between them when you do that. in order
I
to
see.
continue on with construction, if you're gonna be able to get a certificate of occupancy to be able to.
I see.
occupy.
So aren't they already kind of sectioned off for, like, with Highland, there were firewalls to prevent the spread of a fire from one wing to the other? Is that different then?
It's definitely possible. It's just gonna require a lot of coordination between the architect, the local jurisdiction, and
Mhm.
making sure that they understand this part's gonna be occupied where we're still finishing the rest of this. And then their design systems with their mechanical and their electrical, and where they're coming from, how they're getting.
Yeah, it's pretty much pretty much a guarantee that you phase a project, it will cost more.
Mm-hmm.
There's just no getting around that.
Mm-hmm.
But in my opinion, the time it would take you to design and build an auditorium, you could pretty much do the whole school.
Mm-hmm.
It-
I would think it would be
there's
all
not
in,
that much
the whole
difference
package.
Between doing an entire
Mhm.
high school and taking the time to plan and build an auditorium
Mhm.
and a gymnasium structure.
I see. And so could we possibly, just for approval's sake through the city, consider them two separate structures, but it would be one structure, but just for approval for the certificate of occupancy, so that we could get a certificate of occupancy for the first phase, and then we could have the
Yeah,
kids
yeah,
be
you
in
could
there?
you could do that.
Could we do that in a phased
It would-
approach?
It would still increase the cost,
Okay,
because people are still gonna mobilize twice for the same building.
I see.
Or
But-
3 times.
And correct me if I'm scared, but what you're telling is that to build an auditorium and gymnasium, it won't take you any longer than.
Yeah, I
to build
wouldn't
the
break
whole
it up.
thing.
I wouldn't break it up.
And if they're all
It's
part
not
of
gonna
the
save
same
any
wing,
time
Well-
to build you one or build
Oh,
all.
I see what you're saying. Okay, so that's the argument in favor of building a
Yeah,
new
the
school
auditorium
then.
and the gymnasium are the largest parts of the building, so, yeah,
Mhm.
there's really no savings to break it up into two.
Oh, I see. So as far as insurance, when you said how long will they, it would just be the time it takes to build the gym and the auditorium and the cafetorium. So then you're saying it's really not that much more time to build the rest of the
I would
school.
think so.
So that would be the better way to go, and that wouldn't cost.
No.
A lot more.
The difference is though, building on a new site, how long will it take to build on a new site as compared to how long will it take to rebuild what's there right now?
Right, because you'd have to
And it's the
demo
difference-
first.
It's the difference between
Right,
that timeline the insurance may or may not pay.
right, I understand that.
Yeah, and
But the demo also takes time.
neither of the options are gonna be quick,
Right,
so you would have to find out from the insurance people what their duration was for coverage.
right.
I'd also be curious, and, I mean, let's be honest, the four of us sitting up here, we're no different than the members of the community, and their opinions. So, sure, we have our opinions, it's just we have a true vote ability. But I would really like to defer to some of those of you in the district that have more understanding of what our needs are. Particularly one of the questions that comes up, so let's just assume we're gonna build new. What would you use with the existing Highland? Would you recommend a middle school, consolidating elementary schools? Do you have have you thought through that to some degree? And then maybe we just start going to this pros and cons. We could, like I said, we could spitball our ideas all day long.
I
but,
know,
there's,
Right.
to kind of help us guide through this
Right,
process.
okay.
Because I do
So-
think at the end of the day, we're not voting on anything today,
We are
putting
not.
information
No.
out there,
No.
wanting to get where we see these pros and cons, and then we take it to the community and get more feedback. So
I would rather have the community feedback before I list any pros and cons.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to
I
get
am
our
not a
pros,
builder.
your pros and cons, we start somewhere.
Okay,
Right.
kinda what I'm
If I
thinking.
could have our team address a couple of the questions that you've already presented.
Please.
I think one of them was the financial support. And I would like Jonathan to take that one. We've discussed it a little bit, and so if you'll pick that one up.
The financial sort reading, meaning. a
Yeah,
bond.
so a bond, and then what other avenues do we have that we could tap into as a district to contribute to that? So we're not asking our community for so much money.
Correct. So as you know, we do appreciate the plant facility levy that our taxpayers are already giving to us. So there are a few, some money that we could use from that. This is, again, district, no impact, tax impact.
And how much would that be? And is that a per year?
Correct.
I mean, I don't know if you just don't want to
$1
nail down a number, but.
Correct, that's, I would say that's, again, it's gone down a little bit. For example, to put that addition of Pocatello, it was saved over 2 or 3 years. So every year, as we get those taxpayer dollars in, we could, carve a little bit out for that.
Prioritize
So
it.
it could be, a couple million, I would say there. We could probably try to squeeze some of a couple million from the general fund, and the question is, what does that give? What does that get us? So that would kind of be back in your pros and cons, that would be a very small enhancements, let's call it.
How about bond equalization?
Yes,
I mean,
thank you.
you
Yeah,
talked
there was
about
a
that
couple-
times.
Yes.
Just give us a couple points of reference or benchmark.
Yes, and if I.
Oh, I guess the true number is 27%. I'm rounding up. I am sorry, I shouldn't have said 30%, because I thought it was 30%, and you
can
corrected
round it
me.
up, which,
No, you corrected me last meeting, and I'm sorry, I should have written that down.
But I also wanted to
27.
say, even that 27%, last year it was 22.61. So again, and again, this started back in 2005 by the state, it's called the School Bond Levy Equalization Program. Again, it's a kind of a formula based on our district's market value, unemployment rate, and per
And then are
capita
you
income.
locked in each year? Or
It
are you,
changes every year.
oh, so you're not locked in when you get
We
your
are
bond?
not locked in. It
Oh.
changes, for example, in 2013, it was a very
So it's a
dismal
variable rate.
14.76%.
Mortgage.
Okay, and so if you were gonna go out to a bond, again, we would be conservative. It would definitely not be 30%. It might be, closer to the 20%. Because again, we wanna show forth a good faith effort.
Sure.
And a
Yes.
true number. It might, if it raises, then great, that's a tax saving to the taxpayer, but if it's less, I still have to make that bond payment. So I'm gonna ask our taxpayers for more because the state only gave me, 19% in 2012.
So I didn't realize it changed every year. So other thing I would like to ask is what was the cause of it being a lower rate in 2013?
Good question.
Now, I know it has to do with the economy.
Yep, those three things, so I would have to go back, and I don't know even if there's somebody the state could list that. Again, we have that, it's public knowledge.
You mentioned unemployment rate.
Correct, unemployment, I don't know what happened in 2013 that drove that down.
Maybe a better unemployment rate, or?
I'm honestly not sure.
Because I think it's based on needs of the community, correct? Like a community that has a lot, flush with cash, they are not able to participate in this bond
Correct.
equalization.
For example, if the per capita income on the county is very large, then yes, they would not, they get the standard, the minimum is 10% of interest. Whereas this bond levy equalization does cover principal and interest.
Oh, nice.
So-
How does a school district that doesn't have that, I mean, I'm just curious historically, if it fluctuates, could potentially fluctuate, that, how traditionally does a school district prepare for that and budget for that? Just, maybe that's the crystal ball.
Yes, no, here's what it is. So, okay, let's say we pass a bond, like I said, I've done that, passed a bond for the 10 or 15 years, that bond payment, we will get a bond schedule repayment. So we know this year, we're budgeting principal and interest, this is how much we have to pay.
Right.
So then, we again, and it's timing, of course, because we get this bond levy equalization in August, but then we have to ask the taxpayers in September for an amount, so we would say, okay, this year we're gonna get, and again, it'll come in a dollar amount, but it's a percentage, because the state knows our full bond amount. So give us a dollar amount, and then we say, okay, I'll just throw out some numbers, our bond payment's $3 million, we're gonna get, $750,000 from the state, then we'll ask the taxpayers to pay the 2.25. And that's just what we'd have to do every year and change it. And so there is some fluctuation, regarding that fund. I'm taking too long.
No, you're
So-
fine.
No, so like you said, instead of.
It's a great benefit. It's a great benefit for
Yeah.
the district.
That would be.
So
Yeah.
would you, I mean, again, spitballing, 10% would come from plant levy and general fund? I mean,
No, I was going.
is that too high?
That's
too high.
A portion.
Depending on the scope, right? I mean,
Right,
if it's
okay.
Enhancements, yeah, that might be
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
closer. I
And
would
what did
say
we be, in the plant levy, what would we not be, we'd have to make some decisions of
we'd have to
what
make some
things
decisions, maybe
you're not
lower
gonna
schools,
do.
Maybe smaller the first
Yeah.
year. Again, I hate to throw a number at it there,
Sure.
but 5 to 7 million,
Okay.
maybe.
Mhm.
But again,
Out
it
of
would
the
come
payment.
over as the construction process takes 18 months, for example.
Mhm.
We wouldn't need that all up front. We'd use it over a couple months, or excuse me, a couple years, fiscal years.
So the same way we paid Century off as a bond when that was built, the same way. And then instead of saving for projects that weren't voted on by the people, like, the major projects that we've done, it would go to this because this was approved.
Sure,
By the
yeah, and
people.
we'd put it as a SIP project, as you've been involved in that capital improvement project, sorry, for SIP. But capital improvement project, part of that would go to this rebuild, whatever that entails.
And right now, you're thinking 17 years is what we would, a potential,
So again,
I think
that's.
that was Idaho Falls or something. You threw
Isn't that you
before,
said that they
obviously.
kind
I
of-
threw that example out, they said 15 was too small, 20 was too long, too long, so they always said 17. But it's the amount.
depends on the amount, sure.
Depends on the amount, because 10 was good for, 6.5 million bond, we did, 10 years.
And again, I know you keep wanting to say something. One last question. Insurance, do we have a ballpark of what you're thinking? I mean, I know, again, you don't want to do exact numbers yet unless you know for sure.
And I would, if I had them, I would definitely share them.
Sure.
And we heard just literally 2 hours ago saying they're working on that to get that big number for the reconstruction, but we do not have that yet. I would hope it would come in the next couple of weeks
Okay.
of how much the insurance.
But that would also be obviously
Yes,
where the financial
absolutely, that
support
would
would
be
be.
part of this
And-
configuration.
And we have properties, right?
Yes,
That could
was where I was
potentially,
headed.
Okay,
Well, I was
sorry.
in that direction to answer your question, Ms. Oliver. So the district currently has 3 properties. One sits to the south of Franklin Middle School. I'm not sure of the acreage there. It sits a little bit on a slope. Alan, do you know that one?
I don't know that.
I don't know that one either.
It's about 8 acres, isn't it?
Pardon me?
I think 8 acres is what, 8.
Yeah.
8.
Eight.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not a huge piece
No.
of property. And then, because potentially it could be used for an elementary, it wasn't designed or set up, as Mrs. Judy pointed out, the number of acres required for a high school versus a middle school versus an elementary. And so, then the district also owns property out near the corner of Chubbuck Road and Philbin, just inside of Philbin Road to the east side. Yeah. uh-huh.
East.
Okay, and that's about 14.
Yeah, I was gonna
acres.
say 13, but yeah,
Okay.
14, let's go with
And
that.
then at the top of Chubbuck Road, Chubbuck and Olympus, the district owns 22 acres across the street from the Portland Wildlife Complex.
And how much is behind Idaho? Because that goes quite a ways back.
Idaho,
And it has a
itself-
public access road
Yeah, there's
also.
one there. Do you remember that number,
I
Alan?
think it's.
I wanna say, is it teen?
I was gonna say.
Yeah, because it's
Yeah, I
pretty,
think it's-
pretty
yeah,
substantial, and with the traffic, studies already done, that could be valuable to apartment construction or something, because it's already on one side of the building, the school, anyway.
So another avenue is the new House Bill 292, which set up replacement dollars for current levies and bonds to districts. The State Department presented their tentative numbers for us, and I would say they are in the range of 4.5 million to 5.2. I may be a little
No,
too
that's
high,
right.
but I
You just
think
don't know.
that's about the area. So our tax burden to our, I don't love that word, the taxes that we all share as a community will be reduced at least 1 year by, let's just say about $5 million. So that should be, part of our discussions, how, when we're talking about true financial support. They projected out 2 years, but as I mentioned in a previous meeting, you never know about the legislature. What's good today may not be so good tomorrow. And so, that legislation is set up, again, for the future. Again, 2 years, they pointed out probably 3 years of that 4.5 to 5.1, 5.2. Again, those.
And that has,
Those are projections based upon that reimbursement that would come to the district.
I see.
So we could decrease our supplemental levy, which is currently set at 8.25, by that we'll call it again, $5 million.
because it has to be prioritized.
Yes, bonds
To
are actually
levies,
first.
bonds first,
And then-
levies second.
Right.
Yes,
So
so that's
those
directly
are
to the taxpayer.
The possibilities, I think.
Yes, thank you.
So the other thing we haven't talked about is schools that we know,
Oh, the repurposing.
yeah, the
Yeah,
repurposing.
so, Sue, do you wanna talk a little bit middle school and then AJ elementary? You wanna come up, please? Yeah. Like, enrollment and would we be able to reuse that school? Yeah, that was the question. I think
As a
I-
Yeah,
middle
so there's kind of
Yeah.
twofold where, I mean, and I know if there's Washington parents listening to this, but we know that that's what our oldest school now in the district, and Alan, I'm sure, can address that Washington has its
It's-
issues.
It's
So is
costing a lot of
that
money.
someplace that would be, is that valuable property? I know Tendoy came up just because of where its location and its size, that maybe that's, anyway, if it meant consolidating.
Just all money toward the new project.
Okay, so if we repurposed Highland into a middle school, they would still need a band room, a choir room, a second gym, and cafeteria.
Why a second gym?
Why a second gym? None of our,
All of our middle schools have 2 gyms.
oh, I guess it didn't used to when I was there.
And those gyms are used by the communities extensively.
Yeah, the second gym at, like, for example, Franklin, it's really just a cafeteria that they use as a gym. It's not that big, really.
Same as
It's not
same as
like
Irving's second
building
one.
a high school gym,
Irving has 2 gyms.
Yeah, and that their second one is small.
It's smaller.
just a small
Yeah,
practice
they're
gym.
So, I mean, but those facilities would need to be rebuilt or.
So say that
repurposed.
again, if it was to be a middle school, it would still need a gym.
A choir room, a band room, and cafeteria.
Now, as
The
far as a choir room and a band room, the library has a really high ceiling. And I was thinking, instead of the expense of building a new choir and band room, maybe we could use that library. And a library in the other middle schools, they don't have that beautiful, ceiling and the windows and all that. It could be, continuous classrooms, that the library could be kind of along, it's less
Somewhere
pretty.
we need to have.
Yes.
But the gym also would not have to be as large as the one that was, so on a smaller scale.
For not
Okay,
spectators.
so
or
it
any-
could
But I
be,
said, somewhere in that building, we need to have those things.
So this is maybe, can the small gym that's there, can that small gym just be expanded to be a one large gym?
I think if we.
That's probably getting into the weeds.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I would say in the small gym, if you look, Travis, is it east wall that goes into D hall, right?
Yeah.
Then, I mean, structurally, and I don't know if you all follow this, but that, maybe you could push it up one side, but
Maybe it stairs up to a second gym.
Maybe.
And then maybe that part that did not get burned by the fire, maybe we could add that into and make that, I don't know.
Like I said, it's possible, and there's places to put other things, but those are the things that would need to be
be
figured out
replaced, of course.
to be able to-
So then, and I don't know if this is your question or an AJ question, but what if it was made into a mega elementary school?
So we do have, as you know, Gate City, Idaho, and that area, we could use some additional space in terms of, those are usually the schools that we are looking at overlooking from each year, in terms of size. There's not a lot of mega, there's not a lot of mega elementary schools out there. I guess you would have to consider location and transportation. Elementary schools logistically, that could lead to some things we would just have to figure out. There's really not many 1,500 in terms of needs. There are definitely schools, Washington, you mentioned, some of the elementary schools that are older and facility-wise could definitely use an upgrade or just new facilities as well, so.
I guess because then I'm wondering, so maybe not the mega elementary school, but if you were to consolidate, maybe you say Gate City and Idaho, and then do you put, your Gate City, your advanced gifted program, the gifted program, or even some of, I don't know, some other types of programs. So then in that question, then do you, obviously you still need the cafeteria and but would you need a whole nother gym? Would you need, or maybe you do though, if you have more elementary schools, they don't. Or it's a combination of a gym and a cafeteria kind of a thing, so it could be.
So if I can interject, just on the food service, since I'm over that, so again, if it's not a high school, right, high school was dry. So 1,600 students, but we only fed 300 at the most. But you're feeding all elementary and all middle school. So that cafeteria, even if it's, 2 schools, it's gonna have to be very
Right, so
large.
even that,
To be able to feed or get 100 kids through the lunch, even if if they bring cold lunch, they've got to have sitting space. So that cafeteria is just gonna be pretty big, so it definitely could double as.
but you don't
as a
need
gym.
choir room and a band room and
Yeah,
so you just need a larger multi-purpose gym slash
cafeteria and
cafeteria potentially.
AJ, I would like to ask you, because I don't know if this is a good idea, so I hate having everything public before I really know. But what I was thinking is that to keep it closer to the neighborhoods, what about repurposing Alameda into an elementary for Washington and Tendoy, and then redoing boundaries so that Highland is a middle school, Franklin is a middle school, we have them kind of on all the parts of town a little bit better, a little bit more spread out. We don't have a middle school in the Highland area at all, so that would give us a middle school there. And then, what about that, making that an elementary school, consolidating Washington students, and maybe I don't know what the dates and the structures are like, but what about that?
And it's always an option, you would put a lot of elementary students still into a pretty large building. I mean, there isn't a lot of huge elementary schools that are out there because of logistics like lunch and other things that we would just have to take a look at that and how far would we have to look at that from neighborhood-wise, transportation, there would be a lot of things that we just have to consider.
Right.
Have to look at.
The Stalker Elementary in Blackfoot, which is probably not something to really hold up as a standard, it's not, it's 2 levels, and it's large. I work there, and it is a great school, but I don't know if I just don't know if that's a good idea.
Do present a little bit of an issue for elementary, especially depending on programs and other things that are there. There's some limitations in Washington because of the multi-levels.
There's stairs.
Oh, yeah, because it already is multi-level.
We have a few limitations because of those levels, so that
I
would
see.
be taken into consideration as well.
I see, thank you.
I think those are the questions I had written down, unless I missed some that you.
So just one question then. So with all these, both land properties as well as school properties, obviously, we don't have people barking down our door wanting those properties off our hands right away. So I think that, even to think that that's a financial support option, time-wise, I'm thinking that's not a,
So, and
It
to give you
may or may
example,
not.
Ms. Clark, with Bonneville Elementary, we sat on that property for about 8 years now.
Yep.
And, then it was when the Pocatello renewal group took that over, and they purchased that essentially whole city block for about $260,000.
is that the one on Grant?
No.
Where is this?
It's on
8th and 9th,
Bonneville
between 8th and
and
9th.
Bonneville and 8th?
No, 8th and
7th and 8th, or 8th and 9th, I think it's between 8th and 9th.
8th and
I think it's 8th and 9th too, Mr.
Yeah.
Benson. Yeah.
And of course, anybody that wants
Is
it
it-
doesn't want the buildings.
It's Lander?
most likely.
Yeah, and so that was part of it, was their demo cost to take it down. That's why they
Right.
offered the board less money.
As I've said in multiple of our meetings thus far, even with all the architects and so forth, my biggest concern with Highland is parking and space. It is so landlocked up there that we will never grow. Even if you build up So now you've got more classrooms and you can hold more kids, you still have no place to park these kids. And the traffic up there, we already know is bad today. Those apartment buildings go in. And I think that's something the community really needs to understand, that will never go away. That issue up there will always. And I don't know if Brad
Yeah.
wants to chime in
Can
that
we
as the
have-
principal.
Can we have Highlands?
You know, I mean, I know your heart is near and dear to that building on the hill, but I would imagine that those issues, I mean, if you could wave a magic wand and we find the money necessary.
It's definitely not 60 acres.
It's not 60 acres, and yes, I think we keep the football field where it is. The kids, you know, Pokey's going to another place for their football field. It wouldn't be right next door, but you still have those facilities. But we take the school off to another place in Chubbuck that, you know, goes for the expansion that potentially happens there. Go ahead. You've been very quiet.
And we've had these conversations, and I don't know where we're at. We definitely, if we rebuild up there, I think we would need the land across from Highland.
It's not going to happen.
I don't know where we're at.
It's not that much. And it doesn't solve the landlocked
It's 9
because,
acres.
so 9 acres,
And I
but,
know in .9 acres, over at Pokey, they picked up 200 parking spots in .9 acres. And it's 9 acres.
so the one problem is it doesn't help the landlocked situation because Olympus Drive is a federal project and you can't have access onto Olympus Drive. So that parking lot would not give us access onto Olympus Drive because otherwise the city would have to pay the federal government back for that entire project.
I don't think we want kids to be able to exit out that side.
But the price
Yeah,
tag on
I
that
just mean
piece
the
of land, those guys want,
So we are in open communications, and yeah, I would say that that could still be ongoing with that group. Again, I don't know that that door is closed completely, but I think there's still some discussions to be had if that's what the board would like to do. They should consider all of these things for sure.
If we did get that property, there would probably be plenty of room for parking, and we could put a swimming pool in it.
I don't, and then bigger auditorium, that would be big
Well,
enough
a bigger
for.
auditorium
The
would
bigger
be built.
auditorium could go where it is now into that
Right.
parking lot that's current.
Mhm.
Swimming pool I've heard, and swimming, there is not one high school in the entire state of Idaho or one school district that has a swimming pool.
Logan does.
but the other, in Idaho.
Oh, there's a lot
but
in Utah.
The other schools have access to community, and which is
And
what
we don't-
Deanna
and-
has
and that's what
proposed, is
I
that we
want.
do.
And I agree,
Yes.
we've been in lots of discussions over that, Tanya Wilkes,
Mhm.
District 80. I
Mhm.
think we need to work with the city like the other
Yes.
communities in
Yep.
Idaho
Mhm.
and put a bubble or figure out how to leave Ross Park open longer.
Mhm.
I think that provides that opportunity.
It doesn't provide for competitive swimming there.
It doesn't.
I've been in those meetings, because my kids swam for 50 years. Seems like.
Yeah.
I just don't
it's
know
just-
how we can take on, we've just added 3 football stadiums now that we now maintain. Previously, we were not maintaining a football stadium. We went
Right.
to Holt Arena, we picked up
Right.
so many different things that we have to maintain. And
Mhm.
a swimming pool, I think a swimming pool needs to be with the community. as
Yep,
an
Right.
athletic
I agree.
director. I don't think a school district in Idaho can take on an entire
Right, I agree, and that's why what the board for the swimming pool they have been reaching out to American Falls, Blackfoot, all the different communities. It would have to be a partnership, because municipally, they would have to shoulder the burden of ongoing maintenance if they are willing to, because like you said, we can't have the school district be paying for something like that. But if we were able to help the city in the initial cost of building it, then maybe they would be willing to work with us in ongoing maintenance. Like what's the baseball field? You know, we own the property, but the
Hollywell.
city, Hollowell, we don't maintain it. We own it, we own the property, but we don't maintain it. So these things happen all the time, private partnerships.
Ms. Clark, you said you've been in conversations and that we can't have competitive needs there. Is that because of the blocks?
Yeah, it's because of the placement of the blocks. And I don't even think that pool is regulation, a true 25 meter.
Right.
It's.
We're actually in conversations right now with the health department because we think
Oh,
And so we actually met with the mayor and some parents and some coaches and so forth in the city that were talking about putting in the blocks there.
so that they would be, so the only piece, and again, we're totally deviating off of here, but it's not conducive to what would bring, and this is where I think it would be appealing to the city to be involved, is the economic that comes when you
Right.
have a true competitive pool.
With
where you can have
seating.
seating and.
You know, a walking track around the
Right.
top or whatever, you know,
And
actual
Q
good,
is on
a good
target
structure.
to start a project this fall, so they're hoping to be done with their facility by, next August as well.
Mm.
I guess
There's
what,
two facilities that are in the conversation and the works of
Mhm.
trying to make them.
Regulation.
yeah,
side.
I was just really, and maybe, you know, it may not work, but I would really like to explore the idea of adding diving and swimming into our high schools. A lot of high schools in Utah offer those programs to their high school students. That would not solve that.
That's a IHSAA, and that currently we don't have that in the state,
Mhm.
so we wouldn't be
So-
able to compete against anybody.
Oh.
I would
was
just
gonna
like
say,
to
why can't we
offer
be the
that.
first? But-
Well, I would like to offer
Guess you
that,
need
and I
someone to
think
compete
that,
against.
I mean, if we don't have a facility, then we probably don't have an option, but.
Brad, you're
Wallace?
quiet.
No, I think you hit it right on the head, Ms. Clark, is that if we build on the Highland, yeah, parking is gonna be the biggest issue, right, that we face. We're gonna face that this coming year already, as they're, you know, working on demoing and some things, so, we'll see how it goes. You know, we're gonna try and reach out to the county and see if we can use the fairgrounds.
Who's going to direct pedestrian traffic over Olympus? I mean, I know that's, we'll cross that when we
I'd say the
get to it,
kids
but.
that- I'd say the kids that have
but
parking
it's
tickets
literally-
that need to pay them off.
Well, I think for the next 3 years, we don't have a choice anyway.
Well, right, but we'll have to work with the city and
And
get.
they'll just
I
have to
do
follow the
think-
lights and do what they're supposed to.
And I wonder if we can ask for community support for that, just to be parking parking, you know, directing traffic and park. I would think that we could get some help with that.
Those kids are crossing all kinds of roads already at Pocatello.
But not at 35 miles an hour on that
There's a
hill. I mean,
crosswalk.
there-
It's a crosswalk and it's
I lived
traffic.
there for 20 years, and I would get stuck out in the middle of Olympus with my little orange flag, trying to get my kids across the street to Grace, is where they were going at the time. And it's the high schoolers zipping up and down the hall, or up and down the hill. They don't stop.
Yeah, this,
Anyway.
this would be the traffic light.
That's true. You're
Yeah,
up by
this
where the
would be-
light is. but
Yes. This
Anyway,
would be the traffic.
total
light with-
digress on this
Yeah.
subject, but,
Yeah,
With,
parking will be the biggest issue.
yeah.
So I mean, Doug can tell you this, I've been trying to sell this idea of turning Highland into a middle school and building a larger high school on the north end of our district for probably 5 years now. And until I saw these survey results, I stood firm on that, has to be our plan, right? But when you look at this, our community will not support that. So my fear is that we go that route and we don't get the 66% that we need. And then we're another 6 months to a year down the road. You know, we're talking about how we have places for all of our kids right now. We're gonna get normal classrooms back into the bulk of the building. But for the next 3 years at least, our kids are gonna be in fractured locations. And I hate that. I hate that for our kids. You know, you look at high school is 4 years of their life, and it's the 4 most impactful years on any human's life. And they're gonna be in a fractured situation for most of that. And so, I think before, my ask for you as a board is before you go forward with, we're building a new school, this has to be the plan, that you are confident that our community will support that. Because ultimately, if they don't, then we're in a bind, and we've pushed our kids off even longer. And I think that has to be an important piece of the conversation. So I would just ask you to be.
Oh, I agree.
I agree with that, but I do want to say something about that. I was very much in opposition to this survey because I feel like this does not give us a good idea of what the public would really support. And the reason why is because the way it was framed, when I pulled up the survey and I thought, that much money for one group of kids, that was not something that sounded good to me, even though I am in favor of a new high school. That survey would not have, I would have needed to know a little bit more. Like, what are you willing to do? You know, we're willing to sell properties. We're willing to use all of the insurance money. We're willing to, a lot of different things that wasn't included in that. And we can pull kids out of falling apart elementary schools. That was not part of this. And if the community realizes that this affects everyone, that's an entirely different ask. Then will you support $125 million for high school students at Highland only? That is an entirely different ask than we will share an auditorium with the community. We would, if we could do the swimming pool, it would be shared with the community. Everything would be shared. And the kids, we won't have to build an elementary because that's on the future plans down the road. We won't have to do that. And the price for an elementary is actually really, really high. It's not that different from a high school. It's different, but it's very high. And so when you consider the fact that if you look to the future and the projects that won't have to take place, we won't have to build a new high school for the future.
I'm just asking for you to be confident that.
Oh, sure.
We'd have to do the messaging and
I
the
guess the thing
education
that surprised
before.
me by the comments, I mean, I was surprised how evenly divided it was. I didn't come out with a full that this community wouldn't support it. I think with
I
the
didn't.
additional information that Deanna, which I think is always what was expected, but I think it would happen through open meetings like this, through town halls with presenting the different
Mm-hmm.
options. I think, and granted, our time window, I get it. We've got a ton of work to do in the next
Mm-hmm. We'd have to
little
get a lot of
while.
stakeholders involved, if that's the direction that.
But
this
I'm not,
community wants.
I just didn't get the same that you did. I wouldn't say that it was a preponderantly, yes, we need a new high school, but I was really surprised at how evenly divided, even with the the scanty skeleton information that we provided, or skewed information. I didn't get that sense that it wasn't a support.
I was
what I did get
shocked.
is we've got to be looking in the north end. And then in my next question, I know, Doug, you've kind of been, and this is before the fire, as you've been kind of looking at property, thinking of a new elementary school. Is there even property to even think about being available?
There is.
I do believe there are properties available.
Has anyone come forward anonymous?
No.
I don't know,
in fact, we
Well,
heard
I
that.
know of
There are
some.
donations, but
I know of
not
3.
yet. We haven't heard any yet.
Yeah.
No, but there are properties for sale on the northern end of our community that would support a high school, middle school, elementary school. So, yeah, we were just forward thinking,
Right.
and if there was an opportunity there, then we were going to try to take advantage. And so, yeah.
So what about the comment that we kept hearing is that we needed to build for a school bigger than what Highland is today?
So I would like maybe, look, Travis is
Yeah.
eager.
Yeah.
I'll jump over that one, for sure. We need to be a school probably of 2,200, which allows growth in our community. The most recent enrollment numbers come out for the first time. We're gonna be the smallest 5A on this side of the state. Rigby's at 2,032 kids, and they're projected in the next 2 years to be up closer to 2,500. They're the third biggest high school in the state right now. Madison's at 1,732, Thunder Ridge is at 1,694, and they've all built schools. Other than Rigby, they're kind of in a bind. They're trying to figure it out because they're overgrown. But Madison and Thunder Ridge both built schools that can be added onto.
Right.
And they're looking.
Which I think would be a great
Looking
idea.
to hit that 2,200 mark. And I think if, this is a way to help the growth in Pocatello, if the growth is that way, I definitely think we need to be a school that can hold 2,200 kids.
And I know we have some realtors here, and I know that from what I've heard from realtors and a lot of people that want to go to the site, look at our schools and choose to live in Idaho Falls. So I think that if we did have a bit more growth, that lessens the tax burden for everybody. And if we have a really nice facility that is for the community, combined community and for the school, I think that would attract people. It would just attract the growth. I mean, we don't want to be Boise or anything, but it would attract positive growth for that to offset property taxes for everybody. Is that true or not? Is that, I don't, maybe when public comment, maybe they can, that's just what I have heard from multiple realtors, not just one, multiple realtors, so.
So I'd like to, I mean, I think Highland would be great to be 2,200 kids. At the same point, we talked about a new school, and the majority of our school that burned down is what the public sees. That's what's used. Classrooms, I can say classrooms are classrooms, but the classrooms, you know, they're there. You build a new gym, you build, you know, all of these other high schools, they all have 3 gyms. Only 5A school on this side of the state that doesn't have 3 gyms. I know we've talked about that, we know that. You know, we're able to build those parts of the building that are used, right, Jonathan, on a day-to-day basis. That's what's used, the cafeteria. You're right, we need an auditorium for sure. We've talked about that with the district for years. But all of those things can be built, but I think it ultimately, again, you know, I'm with Jenna. Man, is the community gonna support, or do you build Highland there? Make Highland bigger and better and find parking, that's the issue. So that those monies can go into an elementary school, so those, you know, to build 2 elementary schools, those are the thoughts that come.
Mm-hmm.
I guess one of the questions for the architects would be, can we make that a 2,200 school?
Highland?
Where it is now,
Yeah.
I'm hearing that it's already squeezed onto a site.
It's 1,800, right?
Small, right?
Right.
Yes, it is.
So
Is it 18 or
I think you
16?
could do it, whether it
16
would
right
be a
now,
good
but
idea or not, I
it's
don't know.
Uh-huh.
You know, the other thing that we talked about, the cost, the insurance money, we still, no matter what we do, we still have the cost of fixing that building to where it's, and I don't know how much that's gonna cost, but I'm sure it's gonna not be cheap to
Yeah.
have that done.
Yeah,
So we
not
can't just
rebuilding.
take all that insurance money and throw it into a brand-new high school, because we've got a lot of work to do up the high school that's up there.
The other thing, I just really want to reiterate that insurance covers displacement. And I am in favor of more modular classrooms being brought in, even if it's just for, like, for example, band and choir are off-site. Those teachers need to have an on-site office. They need to have storage.
We can accommodate that now with the space that we have available. The problem is our groups that are offsite are our band and choir. And there's not a modular to be made that will accommodate them. because
No, for the offices, for the teachers and things like that.
And we have space that we can provide them an office. I don't know that they're gonna want that, right? They're gonna wanna be where their kids are.
And they have offices at Calvary Chapel.
Mhm.
We'll have computers, that will have a printer.
Oh, that's so nice.
So, I mean, they have to print music frequently, you know, so they will have offices over there where they're with their kids.
They'll be in a bigger, probably potentially better spot than they were, right?
The band's gonna be in a pretty amazing spot. The choir, you know, they're gonna be in a basement. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Ultimately, it'd be better to be at Princeton, but we just can't, it's travel-wise and kids missing school, it just doesn't work.
Mm.
So I think, you know, if we are staying there, and Sue's talked about this, we've gotta have a plan for year 2. Have band and choir somewhere on campus, whether that's maybe you build a smaller field house that can house them, but I think for band, you know, the kids still have to figure a way to get over there. And it's not any, Jenna thinks it's a really short walk.
Oh, it is a short walk.
But in the middle of the winter time, it's not gonna be a really short walk.
Oh, it's
a
still
run
a
then.
short walk. It's a really short walk.
Are we having public comment today?
Yes.
Are we-
Should I move
when are we
for
doing
public
that?
comment?
Do we want to do that now?
No, I'm not
after
saying
this.
now. I'm not saying now. I'm just,
Well, we have 4 people that have written that they want public comment.
but,
It just depends on where you want to go with this discussion. You know, I opened with the goals for today's meeting. The only thing I've written down so far is, and I heard this early on, was comprehensive review. all schools or priority schools are my question mark. That's all I have out of today, but it's been great discussion.
I would like to add, can we look into seeing if we can make Alameda an elementary? Just look into the possibility? Is that
Okay.
a possibility?
And I don't know what else we would need to do to answer that question for you. What specifically would you be looking for? I don't know if that's.
Well, if we're moving kids out of older elementaries that aren't as adequate for them.
So we have Lewis and Clark adjacent to Alameda. So this, it's likely these kids will be transported. It won't be neighborhood schools anymore. So that will, be something we need to look at with transportation and maybe adding more buses to our fleet, because I think we're pretty tight right now. We drive almost 7,500 miles a day with the existing fleet, and we would add to that, but reimbursement for transportation is 85%. But
Oh, that's
we
good.
start picking up kids as early as probably
7:15.
in the morning.
So I guess maybe that would be on your list, would be
Just
perhaps
to
with
look at
Alan
it.
to kind of
Sure.
get
To
in
look at it.
I would like to see what that priority of the
Right.
schools, what, if he were doing the evaluation, this school is 70%, ranking those schools, and then if you had to make, if this was what was hinging on the decision, or let's say, okay, here you now have this building that is the size of a small high school, where would you consolidate from? I'd be curious and to know what recommendations you all would have for that. Whether
Well,
it's
it's-
is it Alameda, is it?
Is it another
Is
place?
it taking Idaho and Great Gate City, but then I don't know what you do with
And-
those buildings then after,
Right,
Idaho,
or-
I get it, it's like
Right.
you're robbing Peter to pay Paul,
Right, and it
then
is,
what
I
do you do?
mean, right, or is it adding on to Idaho, because Washington, they will have access up, Hospital Way, that way, I know that's part of Washington boundaries to come to Idaho. It's still not a
And Tendoy,
neighborhood
was that the other
school.
Well-
And there's Tendoy, I don't know what the best option is, I would just be in favor of exploring them.
I think the need for a new elementary school is not necessarily all the way up here. It's clear down on the southeast corner where Washington is. That's a long ways to be transferred. If we were to close Washington, all those kids that are going to Washington, every one of them would have to be transported.
I mean, potentially.
But the growth is-
Andy and I talked about this, is that you'd have to shift your boundaries.
Right.
Yes,
So, yeah, you'd move Washington, those kids from Green Acres, and everything would, not everything, but that
Just to
part of
put
our
everybody in the
community
process.
would be affected more greatly.
I
Right.
guess that would be the thing, you all obviously would know better, how would you do that?
yeah, I would be interested to know if that's a good idea. I just don't want to make a mistake here and have in 10 years when people are saying, we've got this new growth and why didn't we plan for this? We know the growth is happening and I would just want to do that. And as far as the elementary, I'm not saying it's off the table to build a new elementary. I just think that right now we wouldn't have to.
Right.
It would take that, solve all of the needs of the district potentially if
And I
some
think
of these
because of
ideas
that,
work.
you might get more support for a bond. If you
Yeah.
start relooking how you might shift things to alleviate some of the schools that are over, but me not
Right.
really looking at a map and understanding what your true pain points are.
Right.
Um,
Every single zone would benefit. But right now, the survey looked like only Highland would benefit. But if they recognize, no, your zone would also benefit in these ways. Because for one thing, I am very much in favor of shared facilities. That auditorium could be used by anybody.
Well, but I guess the only thing that and I see Jonathan shaking his head, is, Century has an auditorium. Hoagie has an auditorium, and I guess it would be more, and even, you mentioned the community. Now granted, the Stevens Performing Arts Center, they charge a pretty penny for this district to use that. And I know, hasn't Highland seems like Highland, or maybe they've used the Stevens and, pay a pretty penny to go up there. So, I mean, obviously Highland, in wherever it sits in the future, we need a decent
Right.
auditorium.
What I mean by
100%.
that is just that if Pokey had a really big production, why shouldn't they go to the biggest place? if that, you
Well,
know,
they
if it's a
also
bigger
might want to
place.
just stay in their own school.
They might want to, I'm just
'Cause that's where they
saying,
can
Sure they
rehearse
will.
I'm
and
just
do their
saying that if
classes.
we're sharing facilities, you know,
They don't want to go to Highland to do their thing.
No way.
You
well,
know?
that's why I don't think it should be
I think it could
Highland
be used by the
Auditorium.
community, but I don't know that anyway,
Right.
that's
Okay.
down the road.
No, that's, yeah.
No, I
Like
mean,
the whole
they-
CT. Now,
they
the one thing
shouldn't-
we
they shouldn't
haven't
have to be
addressed,
forced to,
which I know
but-
has also been brought up, is that by
no,
having
practicing,
PV Tech,
practicing, yes.
by having PV Tech, you can't get both of us at the same time?
Oh, nothing happened over here.
With PV Tech, isn't the assumption is that we are alleviating, 1,000 kids out of the district schools? I mean, so the pressures,
They
Well,
come
no,
and
because
go.
they have to have their core
What was
there
it?
still.
oh, only 300. I don't know where I got
And they
1,000
have to
from.
have- yeah, and they
Okay,
have
that
to-
doesn't sound as,
Right, and they still have to have all their core
At
at
the
their
home
home
school.
school. And all the sports and music and band, all that would still be at their same school.
But essentially,
yeah.
we could build that in. I mean, we
but
have
it's alleviating some of
technical
the
writing, business
impetus,
math, and that sort of thing.
right?
Can I'm gonna ask the builders, I guess, could you build an auditorium with parking on 9 acres?
Use your magic.
What you think for auditorium size first? You think a
Something- what
Well,
is-
2,200 kids.
What is centuries?
How many seats?
Well, it's 2,200 kids, high school.
I mean, it would be amazing for the community to have something that could.
I think you use Thunder Ridge in Idaho Falls, where they've got the 2 tiers with a balcony. I don't know, which schools did you guys work on? I know,
Even that one's still only 999 seats.
I was gonna say,
Well, if we have a
if you
school,
could fit about 1,000 people in it, that would be.
well, that's a 4A school, isn't that a 4A school?
Ridge is 5A.
So,
oh, I thought. it
oh,
was-
they're 5A, okay.
Yeah.
So it would, as Travis is saying, we're a school of 2,200, which is what we would need to plan for. I don't know what size of an auditorium that would require. Do you know what size of an auditorium it would
Well-
require?
A large auditorium, I just sat in on a meeting yesterday for Idaho Falls where the Performing Arts Center is looking at a large auditorium.
The Civic Center.
Yeah, to
Or-
replace the Civic Center eventually, and they're looking at 1,800 to 2,000 seats.
Mhm.
They consider that to be a large one, which would be, double the size of most of your standard high school auditoriums.
Uh-huh.
There's limitations with the sizes, there's codes and stuff, it's, the reason why the number thousands where a lot of people stop, because there's different
Mhm.
code requirements.
So
But
if
Rigby, which
1,000?
is the biggest school in East Iowa, is 999.
Okay, so if we were to say 1,000?
What's
I mean, the
Pocatello?
Stevens
Did you answer
Center-
that question with 1,000?
Could you do that on 9 acres?
1,200?
With parking, with parking.
It's also grandfathered.
With parking and one exit.
Just for the auditorium?
I think so.
Yeah.
So with one exit, one entrance, one exit?
Well, the more the better, because you got people coming in. and
Right,
coming
but
out.
there isn't a possibility of more than one entrance and
Well-
exit.
It is,
You could
it's
get
just
2, they're just gonna be on the same street.
Yeah.
So how big an auditorium are we talking?
1,000.
1,000?
I mean, even the Stevens Performing is not even, it's only 1,800.
Well, but this is the, Rigby is 1,000.
Right,
So if
that's
we
what I'm
use
saying,
Rigby as
2,000
just
would
an
be-
example, why build too small?
Greek Canyon and Ridge on high schools in Cache County were built for 2,200 kids, and their auditoriums are only 1,000.
So 1,000 is a good
We
number?
also have 3 gyms with 2 tiers of seating, which puts the whole school assembly in there, front and center.
Right,
So that would be
that may-
necessary
You never
for a
do assemblies in
2,200.
an auditorium. Assemblies are done in a gymnasium.
Yeah.
So
To
so,
answer the question, yes, we could do that.
but can you make Highland potentially a 6A high school?
Well, right now it's one level classrooms, it would have to be completely raised.
Right, with raise like as in torn down? So no, it's not possible.
The other thing you have to look at is your core. Is your core big enough? Those core elements big enough to handle 2,200 students, 2,500 students? The admin staff, common, those type of things can handle on. You can always build a classroom, but is that core big enough?
No. Well, oh, no,
don't
I
know,
should let
Brad.
you answer that. Brad, Travis, Jenna.
I think it depends on.
To double it?
I don't know that it's.
Not double it.
2,200. I think we could go 2,000 potentially, 1,800, 2,000 kids and still, be able to have kids moving from class to class as effectively as they do now. 2,200, I don't know.
And do you have
And you'd have to have
office
a.
spacing, administrative?
15 classrooms, right? We need another administrator, Doug. You know, we need another counselor, so you know, you've got to consider
You have
those
to
kinds
scale
of
it.
things.
Right, and then the
Our
gym.
cafeteria would need to be bigger. I mean, we barely fit the kids in there that use it as is.
And the gym.
The good news, all the things that would need to be bigger are
Burned
burned
down.
down.
I know, that's why I think this is an opportunity.
Other than the parking lot, right?
Except for my office.
And I think you.
And I can't believe they cleaned the carpet in there instead of replacing it.
The other aspect of that too is you can expand your media area, your admin area into some classrooms and then build classrooms on your kids.
Mhm.
Location,
The common.
that common, everything else is that's that core area.
The
What about
commons
the
is very
grass?
small.
And again, I'm looking at this map and it's all upside down to me. But where, is there grass space that you could lose to more parking? I mean, that's awful to
There's
say,
grass. We've
but,
talked- Dr. Wallace, I'll let him talk.
It's not as awful to say at a high school, but, as it is in elementary, right? Because kids are going everywhere, but, yeah, that whole, what is that, south side of the building, where there's that, used to be the senior lawn?
Mm-hmm.
It's
So
just wasted
still in
space,
between.
kids don't really use that, and so we've looked at parking there, we've looked at, that's where our classrooms possibly would go to move us to 2,200.
but if we built up classrooms, a second story of classrooms,
So,
It
yeah,
would
we-
be there, so
we
then you
talked
wouldn't have
about,
that for
like,
parking.
mirroring the B hall, it's on the other side, how it's got an
Where it's
upstairs
filled
and
in.
downstairs would be like that.
On the north side of the building, on the north side of the main gym, that was an addition, we call it Upper B.
With the red lines.
this is the north or
Small
the?
gym.
No, this is north.
This is,
Well, he's talking about next to
Yeah.
the red lines.
oh, the yellow
You're talking-
dots, yeah?
That was an
Yes,
addition.
yellow dots.
And we're just, to the north, to the south side is all grass area, which is, twice as big as that, and that's,
So this filled in area.
And that's where people, a lot of the kids sit and eat lunch there.
no.
They don't.
This
They
is
go
where
to
the loading
gym.
shop is.
Just
right there.
ask
Well,
Dr. Wallace and I.
Well, I drive past there every single day at lunch,
Yeah.
so.
So then I guess the question on this auditorium, would you put, where's our architect? Would you just use the same footprint of where the auditorium is and maybe knock out some of those classes surrounding it to make it a bigger? I know that's not asking you to
Well,
commit to anything, but,
If we had the land across the street, I think that would be a perfect place to build an auditorium that the
Just an
community could use.
independent
And
auditorium.
then where the auditorium is now, you could probably do a band room, choir,
right.
Or cafeteria.
Yeah, or the other idea is you could do what you said, expand that auditorium to kind of knock out some of those classrooms, some of the parking, and then park across the street where that
Right.
field is now.
Mhm.
There's options, right? But
Yep. Okay. Should we go on to public hearing? Are you guys ready for
Can
that?
I just ask?
Sure.
Okay,
Please.
So then I've written down, so to prepare for our next meeting, the board had asked, repurposing Alameda and Highland. Is that, you'd like to have a little more information about those possibilities?
Yes, and any possibilities.
I was gonna say, I'm not hung up on Alameda, I don't know.
I don't, whatever is best.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever,
Yeah, I just.
between AJ, Sue, and Alan, if they have ideas of,
Mhm.
in the perfect world, if you had to,
If you were to vacate, if you had a new middle school, something would be empty. So whatever that would be.
Okay, so, and back to sorry to belabor it, but the comprehensive review, do you want?
Priorities.
Priority schools, okay, and so we could get that underway.
I would.
Oh, let's just do a quote.
Quickly, I'd like to show you the price on that. But we could definitely get with Kent and, the rest of the crew, to basically give you a quote, okay, here's the amount of square footage, if we, obviously, if we do that as quick as possible, not to, take up any time there, but that way you could, see make sure that's what you want.
right?
Uh-huh.
Because I guess the other piece of this is, wouldn't part of a bond potentially also include funding for some of the schools, existing schools, if we had to do improvements there
Absolutely.
as well. So if there, so again, making it appealing to the whole community.
Exactly.
That if we address some of the needs at some of these older schools, rather than just shutting some of them down, or maybe some we do, but are there some older schools that, with a little bit of a boost? I mean, again, I don't want to go to the well more than once.
I was gonna say though, if we make this too big, like
Well, but I
Idaho
wanna
Falls, then
see-
it will not pass. But I am completely agree with that. This has to benefit everybody in some way.
I mean, the only thing I'm already expecting is the backlash when you've got these neighborhood schools, and now you're gonna tell me, and my kid goes to a different, I mean, the emotional side of this, it's gonna be a tidal
Yeah,
wave.
that's why I don't know if
get
that's the
that.
best idea. I'm just asking what you think. If
Gotta get a
that is
wetsuit,
an
'cause I'm worried
idea,
about it.
yeah, if that's an idea
Regardless of
that
what
you
we
feel
do.
like is possible. And if you feel like a different option would be better, I would love to hear that too. Is there a place for us elementary over by Washington? Or, I mean,
Or
you
is
know,
it
I
like
mean,
Idaho, where you say there's
The
property
only
there.
place that we could on that 8 acres that we have behind Franklin, right?
Franklin.
That would be
Isn't that
big
a
enough
hill?
for an elementary school, right?
It's on a,
But it's a
it's
hill.
on
It's on
a
a
hill.
hill.
And do you want?
It was
It could
kind of
be a lot
given
of
to us
excavating
almost,
and
right?
leveling it out.
Okay, so we can have those
Yeah.
for
I think
next
it was just given
meeting.
to us because
right?
it's really not usable.
So that will be a goal.
Can't get her.
That'll be a goal for next meeting.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And I would say not, not hugely elaborate, straw man
Right.
kind of,
Okay, yeah.
you know,
we will brainstorm
want you
that
to
a little bit.
spin wheels that,
Okay, and
I-
I don't know your availability, but I would suggest we pick this up again next week. And then, I know your schedules for some vacation and time with family is important as well. And so maybe we see how far we can get next week and then determine next meeting after that.
I'm wondering if we shouldn't also, do we schedule some community hearings, just to
I
kind
just
of?
love to
I mean,
know.
I appreciate we've got people here that, but,
Uh-huh.
give it an opportunity now that if anyone's listened to
And
this.
then we
and-
might have more goals after we hear what
Yeah,
the
I
community
mean-
says, so.
Maybe we'll change our mind completely after we hear what the community has to say. That's who this is about. So
Right.
I want them
I
to
don't know how
I
that-
want them to speak.
Okay, all right, Mr. Chairman, I think we're,
Ready for,
there's a handheld mic right there. No, it's a handheld now. You can find the wire. Okay?
okay. So, first one I have here is Alyssa Bailey. Is she here? There she is.
Test.
Okay, I would just like to read one statement here. It says, I received requests and comments. I would like to remind everyone to keep all comments civil and respectful. All speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. The board does not respond to the delegations. However, comments are referred to the appropriate staff members for follow-up, and the board is informed of the outcome of these efforts. So, okay, Melissa.
Hi, I'm Alicia Bailey, and I represent a parent group in the swimming community across the whole school district. We've been meeting with local city leaders, parks and rec managers, and the district athletic director to look at options for pool usage. Currently, our 3 high schools swim. They get about an hour to an hour and a half per day for all 3 high schools, which means that puts about 10 kids in every lane, and they only get to come for half the time. So they only get to swim for about a half hour to 45 minutes.
At Idaho State?
At the rec center, because ISU
rec
is shut
center.
down. ISU potentially has a date. Last meeting, last month, they said they still don't know what date they will be done. They are willing to allow the students to come back there for competition when they are done. However, they still only allow for 1 hour of practice a day with 8 lanes and so the kids are limited to about 25 students per school for swimming, which makes it very challenging to compete at a state and district level. Our committee has been meeting with 4 different architectural firms for 7 different options for indoor swimming. Our committee would be happy to present these options to you guys at some time with cost estimates and we're looking at various options of aquatic center down to other options that could possibly cover Ross Park so that it could be used competitively year-round. We are currently in the works with the health department and the Pocatello attorney to get Ross Park to be used as a competitive pool, and hope that we can make that happen, but it has not been confirmed yet. As far as that goes, like I said, we would love to submit some findings to you for cost estimates and things that we have found, if that is something you are interested in. And I will send in with the rest of my ideas via email.
Okay, thank you very much.
We're not allowed to ask questions.
Well, it does
No,
say
no,
discussion, according to
no,
open
no,
meeting
no.
law. If it says discussion, it means we can. Is that not right?
That's
No.
in our public comment process.
Board
so that would
the
be
board
for
does not
facilitating.
respond to delegation, to do,
Okay, right.
Come
but-
back at the town hall.
Okay, next time we need to do discussion.
okay, next we have Melissa Humphreys.
Can I ask Tanya a question while she's coming up? How big are the swim teams this year? How many kids have you got swimming?
Due to the ISU shutdown, we had to cut for swim. So we were only allowed 30 per school at this time. So that's 90 in the community.
But it's exponentially grown year over year until the pool shut down. Okay.
And I agree with Ms. Bailey, if we put cover over Ross Park and use that year round, that would help us tremendously.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
would there be a place for spectators and everything for the competition?
I can't answer 'cause it's the city facility, but.
I would say no.
definitely would love
Okay,
to discuss
so
this.
no? Okay.
You just have to bring your floating.
Or sit
You'll be
against
part
the
of-
wall with it dripping on you. It's, yeah.
Put your
done
legs
that
in.
lots.
Okay, Melissa? go ahead.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Melissa Humphreys, and I'm here because I've got kids at all elementary, junior high, and high schools. I'm actually really glad that I came to this meeting because after the survey went out, I was really upset. Because it went out so negatively, it didn't, you cut out 2/3 of our schools, right? It was about Highland, and so I love that Heather is like, yes, we need to make something for the community. Deanna, yes, we need something for the community. And you talked about the auditorium, the arts, right? We need something big enough for the community. Yes, Pokey probably still will want to do their big productions at Pokey. Century, the same. But every time you go to Pokey, I'm afraid I'm gonna get a sliver sitting on the chairs because it also needs updated. Century is not big enough for community programs. In order to make it not Highland, more community, we need to be able to hold the dance recitals, the Nutcracker, more of your orchestra, your band, your choir concerts in a bigger auditorium that could maybe include all 3 schools. I know you're a big advocate for orchestra and all and at the Civic Center. Why are we wasting money paying the Civic Center when we have this amazing opportunity to build something for the school district, to make them be able to compete at the state level? Unfortunately, Pocatello, the school district, and before Highland burned down, it was not adequate enough. You have a lot of your sports programs right now, especially at Highland, that we're paying to use the MEC because there's not enough room to do what they need to do to grow. We're not going to be able to compete with, band and drama, which Century did amazing this year, and Highland, right? In spite of not having the facilities, so you're not getting all of the kids the same opportunity, right? Century and Highland baseball and softball, they practice in people's garages right now for open gyms because they don't have the places to do it. We need to build something for the community. I am 100% with Deanna on we need to build Century or a new high school for Highland for the classrooms, but the structure has to be for the community or you're not gonna get the support. I've talked to friends and neighbors who don't have kids. They don't care. But when I proposed the idea of making it more community friendly to hold the dance recitals or gymnastic recitals, all of a sudden businesses care.
Mm-hmm.
We are filling up our hotels, our restaurants. We're giving back to the community if we decide to go this way and propose it differently. The survey that was put out really was frustrating. So I'm really glad and thankful that you guys feel the same way and aren't saying, yes, the survey was fantastic and we shouldn't go another way. And I appreciate you being open-minded about it and being aware of the situation and the need for the community. We talked about a 5-year plan for the outdoor and ripped up the school tracks at the junior highs. We really need a 5-year indoor plan to work so that we can hold competitions and get paid and reimbursed for volleyball, basketball, wrestling. Thank you. Anyway, that's my point. We just need to have it so that we can be a community and people want to be here. We can't fall behind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Rebecca Clausen.
Okay, I'll lead it. Okay, I'm Rebecca Clausen, and we've only lived here for 4 years. I went to Hillcrest, but my husband's prior Army, and so we lived in big cities, because Army bases are big cities. In Texas, we lived there for 8 years. In San Antonio, you do not find your own high school football stadium. You do not find your own high school soccer stadium. It's great that Highland is finally getting a soccer field, because I have a soccer player, but I also have a football player who just graduated. But you find that you have shared facilities. And I feel like that brings community and here in Pocatello, I feel like it's Pokey against Highland, or Pokey against, I don't know. It's just very much a head-butting thing. And I'm so thankful for Century for allowing our kids to come to, for Highland to go to Century. Anyway, I've also been on the parent advisory board, and there's always been issues that we need to deal with. One thing is that there is a little bit of mold in the classroom, but that got cleaned up. Now we're working on a parking situation, but the parking will always be an issue. We need to build so we can have more parking for the community events even. I don't like I used to be a sub, and I would sub at Highland, and trying to get in and out of that, especially at the very end of school, I would just wait the 15 minutes because I did not want to deal with coming in and out that one street. And I know that I'm not the only one. So I would really appreciate I think this community event would be a good thing. Also, mega elementaries. Look up El Paso and you will find mega elementaries. My kids went to an elementary school that had 700 to 800 kids, and it was not a problem. It would be a different situation for people to get used to, but goodness, it's not the end of the world, and people can get used to it. And that's all that I want to say.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Aaron Herzog. He left. Okay, that's all the community or public comments we have. So with that, that concludes our meeting. Are we done? I hereby declare us adjourned.
Clunk.
I wasn't sure if it was out. I couldn't see behind